Mike, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be able to connect.
I appreciate it, man. So, There Is No Try, the name of the podcast, where we dissect, disseminate, and pull apart what exactly high achievers or high performers have done when times were at their worst, when things didn't go all that well. But before we get into that, why don't we talk about how people know you today?
Yeah, I'm the founder of a startup to connect people through soccer and fitness called Sphere. I started the company 5 years ago after finishing almost a 10-year season in Major League Soccer, where I played for the Houston Dynamo, Portland Timbers, DC United, went to MLS Cup championships, and kind of prematurely in my athletic career, which forced me into kind of like my transition, if you will, and where I'm at today.
So that's a big one, right? So Major League Soccer, huge career, 10-year career. And we're going to dig into that, like a little bit of your training and a little bit what went into that journey as well. And then your exodus out of Major League Soccer and to becoming into an entrepreneur, which is Ryan Holiday, the famous author, and I had this whole conversation about what's harder to do, become a Navy SEAL or become a successful entrepreneur. And I said Navy SEAL for the record, and he said no, entrepreneur.
Wow, that's incredible. I always go back and forth on what's harder, to become a professional soccer player or entrepreneur. And I say entrepreneur, man. I'm still sold, and I think it's one of the hardest gigs. I mean, maybe it's easy when you're Elon Musk, but I don't know. Yeah, I think it's extremely arduous, and it's a lot more than I think I anticipated. But at the same time, like soccer, you just kind of go in blind and say, hey, this is the goal, and there's no point of return. You just got to go all the way in.
So you're originally from Fresno. You're a Cali boy.
Yeah, Fresno, California, born and raised. Went to school at the University of Washington. Played soccer there. But growing up, I traveled all over the world. I was pretty fortunate to get identified at the age of 8, where I went to Austria for a few years, where I lived alone without my parents, which really forced me to grow up. And
that's insane.
Yeah, I know. It was a game changer for me. And then, college was great, but I was on these youth national teams, which really gave me the ability to travel all over the world. I was constantly in new locker rooms, meeting new families, staying at guest houses and stuff, which really kind of created, me as a person and my interest. The reason why I'm creating a company to bring strangers together.
That experience must have drawn out a level of independence in you that a lot of people probably aren't all that familiar with, right? It's one thing to be like, oh, I'm independent, I can do what I want. But for to have an existence like that at a young age and part of your development, where you really were on your own, living with strangers' houses and really attached to being a soccer player is the only way forward. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're 8 and you're my first experience on really an airplane, on a 747, I got to go in the cockpit pre 9/11, obviously. And it was like, I'm the cute little kid that all the stewardess were taking up and down the aisle, and I get to sit in first class. And I mean, I'm just like, this is cool, right? And then I get up and people are taking me around, and I get thrown into this bus with 20 something Austrian soccer players, these little boys. And the coach is like, hey, you need to know everybody's name before you get off this bus. And it was literally like, I landed, went to the bus, or to the training grounds, got on the bus, and then met all these kids. And the coach was like, you can't play unless you know everybody's name here. And they're like, whoa. And so like, I'm like, okay, what's your name? What's your name? And which, if those players and those that know me, I mean, that's exactly what our concept is. Like, you got to know everybody's name before you get on the field. It's like literally the same. But I mean, I was managing my own money. I was speaking German. I was traveling, the U-Bahn by myself, taking myself to and from training, school. And, I look back at it and it's like, oh, this is great. But my mom said I've racked up a couple $1,000s worth of collect calls. And
there it is.
A little bit. But yeah, I feel like the independence, I didn't realize how much it really affected me until now. I'm being able to look backwards. But at that point in time, when you go and travel the world, probably more than your family, and then you come back and like, what are you going to tell me, Mom? Like, you don't know me, Dad. Like, you don't know what I've been through.
Right.
And, I mean, you know, if I ever have children, I mean, I can't imagine doing the same thing of what they did, but it's one of those things that it helped me as a young man. It's helped me, you know, as an athlete and entrepreneur, but it definitely came with its hardships too, because of just how lonely it is. And probably the reason why I'm so happy just being alone, because I'm so used to it. Right. And also just being around complete strangers rather than the closest people in my life, family, those like, you know, near and dear friends. So it's definitely altered maybe who I am, but I mean, I'm grateful for where I'm at and what I accomplished, you know, by being in those moments.
So I want to just talk real quickly about how valuable that really is, because being a founder of a startup is one of the most difficult and lonely experiences that you will have, right? So people don't understand your journey, number one. And if you're even a tiny bit successful and you start adding to your team and growing your team is not they're not your psychologist. They're not here to listen to you complain about one employee or another, or your inability to make a sale or raise money or whatever it might be. You're the leader. That's your job. Your job is to listen to them, not the other way around. And so it creates a very lonely and very isolating thing, because your team, as it grows, brings you problems as they're supposed to, but you don't get to turn around and take that weight and put it back on them, right? So
you're absolutely
very
right.
self-isolating in that way. So I grew up and really had to learn how to be independent at a very, very young age. Unfortunately, my single parent, my mom was at the bottom of a bottle most of my childhood. So I remember being in grade school, being embarrassed that my clothes were dirty. So you're talking like 7, 8, 9 years old. My clothes were so dirty because my mom would never do the laundry. So I had to learn how to do the laundry at a very young age, which of course you just do whatever they do on TV, right? Like you don't actually know what you're doing. You're just like, okay, just throw some soap in and press some button. And I guess that's what you're gonna do, because I couldn't go to school and be so, and be laughed at and be teased because you were wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in weeks or months, right? So that independence, then I look back and go, that's, one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, is having an absentee parent through my entire childhood. Because now the way I look at it, I think probably you and I are the same in this way, is life can throw whatever it wants at us. Right. We've already built that resolve of like, hey, I'm going to do this. That doesn't mean it's not miserable. Right? There are moments where it can be very difficult, and there's moments where it's great, but you've built up this tolerance for being able to do that will push you through where others may not.
No question. Yeah, what an experience for you. I find a lot of parallels to what you're saying, and then with myself, I feel, going back to the very beginning with the team, I think what's been challenging for me is being a player rather than a coach, right? Like my head coach for the Houston Dynamo, Dominic Kinnear, incredible manager. I mean, at the time he was an asshole and I hated him, but I really appreciate this guy. I mean, what he did, taking a club, essentially like, relocating us, and it's like a expansion team almost, and then we're winning 2 back-to-back championships. It's incredible, right? And he never came to the locker room with his problems. Like he never hung out with the team. Like he was never the guy, the good guy. He was always the bad guy. Like he had to do that. I think what's difficult is, well, not difficult, but when I first started the company, I knew I was like, I have this big idea and I need to, bring some people into this atmosphere and start creating this synergy. And a lot of those first players were friends, right? Like they were they're built off of friendships and relationships about this idea that then bought into the concept and the direction and the vision. And then, now here we are 4 years later, they have equity, and, changing that from, hey, we're friends, to this is a business and this is like life or death. So there's and I still am very compassionate towards each and every one of them, but my demeanor towards, well, there's investors that have now put a lot of money in, there's more expectations, is changing, obviously, for me, being able to like have relationship problems and, share it with a team, coworker or a teammate, or, hey, I'm personally just lonely, and thank God my cousin lives in Houston, and so I have him to lean on. But yeah, you're right, it is lonely. And that's one of the things about being a professional soccer player. I mean, we always played on the weekends, so we never went out. I mean, I never drank really like my whole entire like 10-year career. I mean, so it wasn't like partying was a big deal.
Right.
Even though I wanted to, and I did occasionally, it was more or less being comfortable with just being alone and knowing that what I'm doing is, much different. I chose a different path than what others would do. And going back to my childhood and that experience of flying to Europe and being by myself really set the table for me, and operating independently from my parents or from other friends. I mean, I had friends, but not really. Like, I was a loner. I moved schools in high school to a different school for a better soccer team. And I had a couple of friends that kind of took me in, but I mean, I was at the gym with the basketball coach at 5 a.m. I mean, I practiced after school by myself. My mom drove me back and forth to the Bay Area, which is like 2.5-hour drive from Fresno. And that's one direction, and then I was, with these guest families each and every weekend. So like, I have like friends, but I don't have like, when people are like traveling that group in those relationships. And that's just something that I'm comfortable with, because I'm comfortable just going to a bar at an airport and be like, these are my family. Like, let's go. Where are we at? I feel more at home within my business, which is hence the reason why I wanted to create Sphere, was because I was lonely and I was looking to fill the void or the gap of professional soccer, which was the community, the family. And I no longer had it once I stopped playing.
So let's talk about how you made the transition into MLS. So what did that look like for you? So you're on youth teams, you're on travel teams, you'd played in Europe. Take us through a little bit. How did you get sort of from there and picked up by MLS, and then we'll kind of run through your career here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just on the fast track of it. I was grateful to get a full scholarship to University of Washington. The track at the time, it's changed significantly now over the past decade. But you go to college and then you're basically identified, and then you go into a combine where at that combine, they pick like the best 40 or 50 players in the country. And then usually, MLS teams pick those players based off of how you perform and your, stats. But one of my coach at the time of the University of Washington had a lot of relationships with like LA Galaxy, San Jose Earthquakes, Salt Lake City. So during the summer of going into my senior year, I had went and, trialed at some of these clubs. And I mean, I had a good collegiate career. My first year, I was actually horrific. And I had a girlfriend at the time, a high school girlfriend that I was still mentally checked out and back in California with. And thank God she cheated on me. And thank God, like, I had to go to a sports psychologist and a therapist. And I really went from rock bottom. He was like, I'm gonna have to pull your scholarship to All-American next season. Took our team. And yeah, it was game changing for me. So it was that really pivoted. And then, I didn't go home for like summer breaks. I just stayed. I worked tirelessly, and I actually had a really terrible ankle injury. And, it was like right before the season started. So I played the rest of my collegiate career, professional career, on my left foot, my weak foot. Nobody knows that.
Wow.
Well, but when I got drafted, my coach to the Dynamo, he's like, "Hey, you're left footed, right?" Yeah. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, "Yeah, play left defender." I was like, okay, like left mid. So anyway, yeah, it was one of those things where, I just, that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, I probably did 20, and it just was like, okay, with this foot than the other. But yeah, I got drafted in, what was it, the 2006 to the Houston Dynamo, and I was like one of the last draft picks. I was maybe like the 44th, I think, pick overall, or out of like 48. And I remember my mom wanted me to go to this combine, or not combine, but she wanted me to go to the draft. And this isn't like what you're seeing on TV with the NFL. This is not that, but it was done up for the first 10 or so players. But after that, everybody's not going. They just get called, or like you just kind of see it online, and it's like, okay, great. But my mom and dad were like, no, we want you to have this experience. Well, there was no promise that I was getting drafted. Like, nobody called me and said, hey, I'm sitting here in Philadelphia, I think it was. Yeah. And anyways, I'm that last pick, or one of the last picks for the Houston Dynamo. And it was because I went there, and then one of the coaches identified me, saw me, and he's like, hey, come over here, and shook my hand. And then Dominic came over and he goes, you know why I picked you? I said, why? And he goes, because I know you're not going to mess up my locker room. And he said, because I know that you're going to be a good player, but you're going to be a better person. And he goes, and to me, that's more important. And I was like, wow. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I mean, and my coach always told me when I went to these teams, he's like, hey, be the first one on the field, be the last one off, help everybody with the balls and the goals, and just make sure that you're always, you know, shaking everybody's hand when you walk in the locker room. And really, like, that was it. And I'd say that's probably why my coach kept me the first 4 years, because I didn't actually start as a pro for 4 years. Like, I never actually took the field as a first team player for 4 seasons.
Wow.
And I was looking at myself in the mirror thinking, Jesus, like, what am I going to be doing? Like, I'm making $19,000 playing professional soccer. And I'm thinking myself, like, this is it. Like, this is what I signed up for. And I mean, when I wasn't playing, he's still keeping me on the team. So I'm like, why are you keeping me? I know I'm good, but that was really probably the difference, is because I was such a good teammate, and I made the locker room a better place for everybody to play. And that was really one of the
There's
reasons.
real value in that, man. People need to understand that you are, even though you're not playing on the field, you're still a leader.
Yeah.
But those are leadership qualities. You are leading from the front. You are setting the example for others to follow. And you need people like that within your organization if you are trying to create a culture of winning in your organization. People overlook that over and over again. And you know what's funny about this is HBS, Harvard Business School. Mm-hmm. They know a thing or two about business. And they looked at all these various startups. And they were trying to figure out what was the thing that made the startup successful versus the other ones that were unsuccessful. And so they looked at things like intelligence, like what level of degrees everybody had. They looked at funding, like who got the most amount of money. They looked at how creative the idea was. They looked at all these different things. And the number one thing that they found with successful startups wasn't money, wasn't smarts, which are the two biggest one. It was the person, the leader that could build the culture.
I know that.
That's it. So this is Harvard Business School. What do? They sell you really expensive education so you can go raise a lot of money. And then they came out with a study that says, actually, that's not what you need if you want to be successful. What you need to do is develop a culture within your organization of pushing boundaries and being successful and never giving up. And so the number one quality they found was grit, and the number two was your ability to build this culture around grit and tenacity. Those were what you needed.
I love it. I believe it. I mean, you know,
you are it though, Michael. I'm like, that's you.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, my parents are great. My family's great. And I was raised in a loving, vibrant Catholic family with tons of cousins. And, you know, so to carry that into the locker room, like I always tell everybody, my favorite part of playing professional soccer was always the locker room. Like the competitiveness, don't get me wrong, like there is a part of me that has that, but I always enjoy the relationships and, you know, just the banter and that community, which I think most athletes do anyways. But I think my one gift that I've been given from God and, you know, from my time playing soccer has been to truly be able to feel other players and other people's energy and to be able to understand like just that dynamic. But I will say this, my MBA and I like Harvard Business School, if they could dissect 2006 and 2007 in Houston, Texas with the Houston Dynamo and that organization at the time in that locker room, I mean, I was amongst some of the best soccer players in the country world. And I was a part of this successful team that won 2 back-to-back championships. And I mean, I got to see firsthand, you know, guys fist fighting. I got to see them, you know, crying and consoling each other. I mean, I got to see the dynamic of actually working and how that on the field, off the field part of it, you know, where there was a jokester, where there was a veteran that was the highest paid player, but was carrying the trash out and leading by example. I mean, like you just talk about like a true culture, and people can read books and they can talk about it and they can say this and say that, but unless you actually have been a part of it, I think it'd be really hard to actually just go and create and do. And I'm not saying that others can't do it, because I'm sure there's other successful entrepreneurs and some entrepreneurs that don't even need other people. You know, you build a widget and create some online sales, but for what, you know, we're trying to accomplish as a team, it's by far the thing that I fall back on the most. And I'm always so adamant with our brand, but also just the energy of our team in the locker room. I always refer to, and I'm like, and I'll message our teammates on Instagram. Like I'm literally there, like Instagramming after class. I'm like, hey, how was the locker room? Like, how was the atmosphere? Like, oh, it's awesome. And every conversation I'm constantly saying, are we connecting? Like, what does that look like? But what you said is, I played a role, but everybody has a role. And like in our laws of the game on our website, we just kind of launched this, but they're like our 10 commandments, if you will. But I always say, like, play for the name on the front, not the one on the back. I was like, the team's success will highlight those players individually because of the success of the organization. Don't lead with your own personal interests, lead with the teams, because as the team is successful and it turns into this multi-million-dollar at whatever company's gonna be like, who did this? Like, where was
exactly
this guy, this girl? And then all of a sudden things would change significantly.
That's exactly right. Can we go back just for one second? Because you glossed over something that's really meaningful that I think that a lot of people would find really valuable, which is you're moving forward with your soccer career. You've moved out of California. You've got the girlfriend behind. Mentally, you're with her thousands of miles away. Physically, you're trying to play the game. You're not doing a very good job playing the game because your head's not into it. Your head's back with her.
Right.
And then you said something. You said the best thing that happened to you was that she cheated on you because it forced that separation.
Yeah.
And I just want to point that out to people that are going through the dip, right? We talk a lot about the dip here. You know, when things are really tough and just everything feels like it's coming down on you. How do you get through that moment? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to talk about you like you're not here, Michael, but you know, Michael, you pointed out that it was the best thing. So at the time, it was the worst thing, right? It was just the sky is falling. Nothing could be more tragic. But actually looking back on it, it was that snap, that moment, that epiphany that changed the trajectory of your life. And it wasn't like, okay, today good, tomorrow, you know, today bad, tomorrow good. It wasn't that, right? It's a process of as you went through it. And as you did, and you took the proper steps, you went and had a sports psychologist who helped you get your head back in the game. And then what did you do? Then you took the onus to go, now's my moment. And you were an all-star, literally within less than 12 months, right? So to go from the shit, right? To go from when times were at their worst, to slingshot out of that. You know, people say silly things like it's darkest before the dawn and all those things. That's all wonderful. But what you said there is really important. It ended up being the best thing that ever happened to you. And you used it as a moment to excel to a whole new level.
Yeah, you look at like, I mean, you know, let's just look at SpaceX, right? Like there's a massive engine that gets this incredible piece of technology out of the atmosphere into space, and it needs something very powerful to ignite it, right? And something powerful to carry it. And I say that, like, when I was a child at 3-4 years old and I played my first soccer game, there was something powerful that took over my being that I can't ever describe, but it just consumed me, like my being, and I couldn't do anything but look at this soccer ball, and I couldn't like help but just, I mean, it was crazy, like my Precious from like the Lord of the Rings, like that. Right. But fast forward that to my collegiate career, I had the second moment of that injection of power, I'll call it, right? That really took me from here, because like I hit it, but it was like to get from here to here.
Yep.
was that, right? And then I had it again. I had it, and for whatever it is, it's always been through women and dating, and it's because I'm a helpless romantic and I'm a lover. Like it's just, but this fury, this energy, this it collides. And the last one was the Houston Dynamo and Dominic Kinnear in 2014, when my contract wasn't picked up on the last day of preseason, and then I spent another 2 months just going to training for free and promised a contract. And then Chris Kennedy from the Houston Dynamo, the general manager, lovely guy. I've talked to him. We worked on the World Cup committee together. No hard feelings anymore. But he's like, hey man, you know, we'll offer you $19,000. Funny enough, the same money that I was making earlier on to sell Dynamo tickets. And I just said,
wow.
See you guys later, man. I'm out. And at that moment, I started a very, you know, difficult transition. And, you know, like I said, you never want to cross people, and you never want to give others the ability to want to come back and beat you.
Right.
very powerful thing. Just like in sports, you don't need to taunt, just be a gracious winner, you know.
And a gracious loser.
And that's why I just say that, but that power, that fuel, that spark you need. And it sounds terrible because I don't want people to put themselves in situations to get hurt, because it's not like it's just going to happen, right?
But yeah, that's not how it works, right?
And you're pursuing something, life is going to obviously happen. And because of those moments, I mean, I don't know if I would be where I'm at without that, right? So it's also like, you can be really smart, you can get funding, and maybe you have the culture, but you still need things that are going to happen, karma, that need to still trigger.
Yes.
Because what you said, like grit earlier on, right? And what they're looking for in like a level 5 leader, or somebody that can take this idea and turn, from dirt to, $1 billion. Grit, right? Because the ability to persevere through that, two different people will do two different things in those moments. And one is going to get really fired up and say, okay, you're going to remember my name, and I'm going to be the most powerful individual that you've ever come across in your lifetime. Or, I'm going to go for that bottle. I'm going to go grab that box of chocolate. I'm going to feel sorry for myself. And those two trajectories are much different than the other.
They are very much. And there's nothing wrong, everybody. When life kicks you in the gut, there's nothing wrong with being upset in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. That's a natural reaction.
No, nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
What Michael was talking about, what I talk about all the time is, okay, be upset. Now what? Right. The next thing you go, okay, let yourself be upset for a minute, for 6 hours a day. Fine. But then you ask yourself, now what? Yeah. Now what? Well, now what are you going to do? Now, great. Now you're pissed and you're eating Haagen-Dazs and you're watching Netflix. Fantastic. Awesome. Are you going to do that for the rest of your life? Are you going to take some shitty dead-end job and make a minimum wage, or, your $31,000 a year for the rest of your life? Like, is this what you're going to do? Are you going to succumb to a mediocre life? That's really what you're being asked. That's what the universe is asking you. That's what's happening. This is your chance to go, hell no. Not just no. Hell no. You have to rise up against that. So Stephen Pressfield wrote this amazing book called The War of Art, right? And one of the whole book is about this thing that he talks about, the resistance. And the resistance is, it's 6 a.m. and it's warm under my blankets and I don't want to get up to go to the soccer field to run laps, right? I don't want to make that extra sales call. Like, there's that resistance against you all of the time in life. And you have to go to war with that resistance. You have to push back. Every day you go to battle with that resistance. And that is never more true than being an entrepreneur, where you have to wake up every day and go, the world is not out to help me. I have to go to war to make it happen. So when that bad thing happens to you, you have to go, okay, that sucked. I get it. Now what? And engage. Right? You really have to engage. So, okay, let's skip forward again. You tell Major League Soccer to peace out. You're done. And now you're in this phase of like, well, soccer was my whole life. Working out, training, traveling, that was my whole life. Right. Now I've got to make a pivot. Now I'm in that moment. So tell me don't tell me about the business yet. Let's pause for that. But tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what your parents think.
One coaching tip on what we were just saying, though, I wanted to just help maybe someone to think about soccer. Turnovers are going to happen, basically mistakes, but it's your reaction to that turnover that is the difference between a player that plays at the top level and a player that doesn't make it, right? So instead of dwelling on it, you've got to be able to react quickly and move, right? So making mistakes is good. Things are going to happen, but your reaction to that turnover, that mistake, is going to be the difference in the game. So talking about the feeling of my birthday, May 24th, turned 30, and was like, okay, I was feeling the locker room environment of me being there, and it was no longer harmonious. It felt forced, awkward. And I'm sure we've all been at a dinner party or a family event or a girlfriend's place or a business office where it's just like, this does not feel right.
Right.
And guys on the team are asking me like, hey, are you signed? Like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? The coaches now were kind of just like, okay, bro, like you're not signed. You've been here for 2 months. Like,
what's the deal? Right.
But they didn't want to say that because, and so, yeah, I mean, the girl I was dating at the time lived in New York, and, just bought a ticket, went up there and lived with her for a couple of weeks. And, I mean, it was okay. I'm going to get signed. I need to stay in shape. I need to stay focused. I need to figure out where I can go, what I can do. The problem was it was a World Cup year, and season was about to shut down in June because, that's what happens, 6 weeks, the world stops to watch the world play soccer against each other.
Right.
And, I mean, I don't even know what to say. I mean, besides, I was just like, what the hell am I going to do? I mean, I had no idea. On the other side of it, it's not like anybody was calling my phone saying, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And obviously there's this facade too, like that I don't need anybody, or that I'm always showing everybody that it's okay. Right. As an entrepreneur, it's okay. I'm like, we're good. The world's not ending. We're not running out of money. Like, we have 1 million people. But the biggest blessing was I was going to Hawaii for my yearly soccer clinic that I would do at the Four Seasons in Kona. And it sounds very, it sounds too good to be true, which it was. But I was going there to go, visit this family that became a friend's family that became my family. And while I was there, I started really going through my transition. I did a week soccer clinic for these kids. And then, my friend Kathy, she's like a mom. I have like these motherly figures, which is probably another thing. But she's like, well, where are you going? I was like, I don't know. And she goes, well, just stay. Like, we got an extra room, like extra part of our house. She's like, you can train, some homeowners, or you can train the kids on the island. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah. So, I mean, I ended up staying in Hawaii for 2 months, 2.5, almost 3 months.
Wow.
I mean, again, like I'm staying at the Four Seasons. I had no business being there. But like, the backstory to that was, again, you never know who you're going to meet, and why I believe that there should be no strangers on this field, because obviously we won the championship in 2006. My sister eloped, married a guy in the Navy. He got stationed in Hawaii. I went to go visit her for Thanksgiving, but I made $19,000 my first year. I don't know if I mentioned that. 17, yeah. They were 19. But I played online poker, and I made like 50, 60K my first year. And and my best friend, Stuart Holden, who's a poker phenom, but we would play poker together. Well, anyways, I bought myself a first class ticket to Hawaii. Well, on that flight, I mean, I had no business being there, but I met a gentleman whose family built at the end of the runways, where the exhaust planes.
Yeah.
That's his family. So I'm like, hey, let me buy you a drink. And we're sitting in first class, and he starts laughing. He's like, kid, it's free. So we just grabbing mimosas, and anyways, like, let me set you up with my daughter. Like, and so I became friends with this family, and we had a lot in common. Great people. Well, fast forward, I was playing for the Portland Timbers. I scored a goal, and his wife, I've never met, was like, you need to come, you need to come, you need to come. And I was like, dude, weird lady, like, I don't know you, but I'm like, okay, I'm in Vegas with a bachelor party, and the girl I was dating at the time, she's like, hey, let's go somewhere next weekend. I'm like, okay, where do you want to go? And then this lady, I scored that goal. We started talking again. She goes, this is the last time I'm ever going to invite you to Kona. I'm like, okay. And she messaged me, she says, here, last chance. And so the girl I was dating at the time, she said, let's go to, I was like, name wherever you want to go. I was like, Palm Springs, Tahoe, Kona, not Hawaii. She said, Kona. I'm like, weird. I'm like, okay. I was like, book it. Let's go. Anyways, I had no idea where we were going to be going, but get picked up in a beautiful car. We go to this Four Seasons. I'm just like, wow. So that was like 4 years earlier. So I said, let me help you. Like, what can I do to give back? And like, why don't you run soccer clinics for our community, and give back to the Ohana Foundation, which is kids on the island. Anyways, because of that story, I created this family, and I was able to like go there for 2.5 months. And while I'm going through this like difficult transition and feeling all these different ways, obviously I had some income, and then obviously like it was nice to have some type of support. But I actually there's this thing called the Aloha Spirit, and there was these really weird manifestations that started to take place, and these really weird dreams I started to actually have. And I kind of had ideas about Soul Cycle and berries and stuff, but everything really started to come together. And I have some pictures, but I started just like writing notes down and started putting everything out on the wall that I was, dreaming and visualizing.
And is that the transition from you really coming out of soccer and becoming an entrepreneur? Is that not the one moment epiphany, but this journey, if you will, of discovering what your future is going to be like, what you want to give back to, what it's going to feel like? Is that where that started to make that move?
I still wanted to play. but it was one of those things where like no team wanted to take me yet because they didn't know what the rest of their season was going to look like. They're on this break. So in my mind, I'm still training like I'm going to go back and play.
Right.
Starting to have these ideas. And it was finally at a point where I was talking to a mentor, friend, and he's like, you got to stop hiding. Like, you got to stop hiding. Like you're not going to do anything over there. But he also started to tell me this. He said, go with the current. And he said, like, and I'm calling every agent, every team, and I just feel like I'm just swimming upstream, like I'm trying to make something happen when everything is pushing me back the other way, but I'm still holding on, right? And so I think that at that point in time is when I made the decision, and I had a crazy story happen to me when I was in Hawaii, a DUI scare, and I wasn't like overly drunk or anything. I had 2.5 beers, but I was taking my friend to the airport, and I went through a speed trap. Cop pulls me over, says, you putting in the back of the car, says blood, blow, or drive. And something internally goes blood. And I don't even know where it came from, but I just spit out blood. So I have no idea. I'm scared. Well, 30 minutes up the hill is the hospital, and he's pissed. So I'm metabolizing my alcohol. I can feel myself sobering up, and I'm just like, I'm so mad. Well, anyways, I go up the hill. He says, I told you I'd let you go, so I'm going to let you go. I don't have a wallet, phone. There's no Ubers. There's like no taxis. I'm 26 miles away from the Four Seasons. What the hell am I going to do? So I'm literally dressed like I'm out in Orange County with you, going to go out to drinks, right? Like, I'm like, what? I'm in Cole Haans. I'm in tight jeans. I'm so mad at myself. I start running. I do a half marathon down like the highway.
Oh my God.
Yeah. My feet start bleeding like David Goggins. I'm like, I like take off my shoes. I'm hearing coyotes, the ocean's right now. I'm just like, this is like one of those moments. God, I'm listening. Okay. And I'm finally like, stick out my thumb. Like, I can't do this. And the first guy that picks me up is this big Hawaiian. And he fits the bill of your typical Hawaiian. If you were to picture, the dark skin, chubby, big smile, white teeth, all the vibes, the puka shell. And he picks up in his Honda Accord and he goes,
I love it.
Oh, relax, slow down. Everything's going to be okay. Like, and it was like this, like first, like nurturing moment. Yep. And then takes me a mile. I was like, I got to go, but keep going. I go another mile and I stick out my thumb again. And I get picked up by a belligerent, drunk, former boxer who had 2-3 kids of his own, divorced, and is training kids to pay bills. And he's drunk. Like, this guy's drunk. And I'm like, I don't care. Just drive slow. And I'm going to give you $100 if you take me to this place. And he starts telling me, stop. Don't do what I did. Don't do what I did. Don't chase athletics. Don't chase women. Don't chase, like, focus on yourself. Like, I'm like, I got on the next flight out of and back to Texas. And that was really the game changer for me. And hell started once I got back, because at this moment you talk about feelings.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're fired up, man.
I'm broke. Well, I'm fired up, but I'm broke.
Right.
I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I haven't really been in Texas for 6 months now, 5 months. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I went and get a desk job. So I started working my network, because I wanted to go back to Houston after I was in DC, because I knew I was going to be transitioning. And my grandfather passed away, and I knew, like, this is it. Like, this is my last year. And I always felt like I believe that my network was my net worth. And I knew always Houston was where I was most connected to, is the reason why I went back there. And that's why I said, let me start picking up the phone and start calling these contacts. And so I went to Morgan Stanley to start working. And that's where I did like the P program, which is private wealth management. They throw a bunch of kids at the wall and hopefully you stick and make them a bunch of money.
Right.
While I was going through that, I was able to start making some money for at least a little bit. And then I jumped to a private equity firm, the same thing. They wanted me to take my Series 7. I failed twice. And so that kind of bought me 6 months. And in that 6-month period is when I really started to work on Sphere. And one of my buddy Stuart's brother, he was running a boot camp. And I'm like, why can't I do that? Like, but why not do it more with soccer? Why not? And one of the friends that I'm very much indebted to, but she had an optometry practice. And she's like, hey, I'll pay you some money just to like market and stay here because I have another practice and I'm building this one out. But in the back, there was this, I don't know, 2,000 square foot little parking lot. It was perfectly flat. I was like, can I use that to train kids? And she's like, yeah, no problem. So I started doing personal training sessions. And then I started bringing the parents off the sideline, like, hey, let's just play. And they started laughing and having fun. And that's when the lights went on. And I was talking to that mentor friend. And he goes, I was like, I have this idea. And he goes, don't tell me about it. Because number one, I have the money to go and do it. But two, if you have an idea, just go do it. And people like it, then you're going to find out. And that's how I started. And that was kind of like where, about 5 years ago, all kicked off.
And so now you're Sphere full-time. That's all you do all day, every day.
Yeah. I mean, besides sleep, that's about it.
That's about right. Yeah, that's the right answer. So for any entrepreneurs out there or wannabe entrepreneurs out there, just understand that you're committing to a life of, or at least a handful of years at minimum, 3 to 5 years at minimum of living, breathing your work. And the only time you're not working is when you're passed out.
Yeah. I brokered natural gas for 2 years after that last stint at Morgan Stanley. And, I was really like, I knew I needed money. I needed health insurance. I was like, I still need to live.
It's hard.
I was tired of living on couches and I could barely pay my car bill, gas. Like it was, but for me as a pro soccer player, I still wanted to keep that facade that like, hey, everything's good.
Right.
I'm fine, mom and dad. I'm good. And so I was brokering natural gas where I met my best friend, who's our main investor. And, and just looking at that experience, finally they kicked me out. Like they literally were like, hey, we're going to pay you to leave. And they gave me the release, paid me to leave. And like, that was probably 1.5 years ago, 2 years, probably coming up actually this year. And that really gave me the push of, okay, like this is it. Cause I was never going to jump.
Yes.
I was never gonna, it's too safe, right?
Yep.
The paycheck, 2 weeks, the office with all that stuff. I mean, and thank God that happened. So that pushed me over the edge. And yeah, I've been solo, like working on it since then. And, I've been, again, like just working through the trials of a startup, but yeah, here we are 5 years later.
So here we are 5 years later. And so this is, we're coming up towards the top of the hour. So this is a great time to talk about where you are, where Sphere is, and what you see the next couple of years for you and your business to look like. So first off, hats off to you for even getting this far, because this is a massive accomplishment that most people, unfortunately, and this one of the reasons we have this podcast is to encourage people to take risks, to take action. And I really appreciate you being so candid about being forced to take that action. And sometimes that's what has to happen to us. So, okay, now you've got Sphere, you've been able to attract an investor or investors, and this is what you do full-time, all day, every day, and you're trying to build this business, build the team, build a brand, build a culture. I mean, it's so much. One thing that entrepreneurs have to do in the early days is absolutely everything, right? So you're making major PR and marketing decisions, you're talking to engineering, and you're taking out the trash, right? Like you are literally doing the worst jobs and the best jobs and all the in-between jobs. I think about it yesterday. We have our team call for my company. So we have our team calls every Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the way we have the team call structured is all the department heads are on the call at the same time. And I give a quick update, 5 or 10 minutes in the beginning, and then we do a little round robin. And the idea is that everyone gives a 5 to 10 minute update on what they've been working on since the last call. And the goal of it isn't to report into me. I talk to all these people all day, every day. I know what everybody's up to. The goal is so that everybody on the team knows what everybody else is working on. And that's where the creative juices come in, right? people start going, oh, hey, I know a guy, I know a gal, let me help you here, here, here. And it really changes the dynamic and really keeps us all creative. Yeah. So while this team call is happening and we switch from talking about engineering to talking about marketing to talking about customer service, and we're making these transitions, one of my employees texts me, who's on the call, and he's like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's like herding cats, because you have to have answers or at least solutions for everything, right? Whether it's how are we going to handle customer service issues? What's the process of ticketing and following up on those customer service issues? How do we track our sales? What PR campaign are we going to be doing? Right? So it's 100 different things, switching gears all the time, and you've got to know a little bit about all of them, unfortunately. Yeah. And he just made the comment like, "Oh my gosh, how do you focus on so many different things all of the time?" And that is the journey. I don't care what startup you're building. That is exactly what it's like. So top of the hour here, give us the 30-second pitch on what Sphere is today and where you see it going in the future.
Yeah. One thing on that last piece is it's just like entrepreneurship is so much of a game to me, and why I love it so much. And it's because it reminds me of being a soccer player.
100%.
And you got to be thinking a few steps ahead, but you also know that everything's going to go wrong, and yes. And you got to be able to work together to continue to keep playing in this direction. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to go exactly, like I said, to plan, but as long as, again, you like have the right structure and you're collaborating and working. And that's why I like being a soccer player. I golfed in high school, but I loved working with people. So again, like, where do I fit in? Because you said like you're kind of doing everything, and you kind of start to get to a place where like my strength is in marketing and branding. So like, let me focus more on that, and let me, kind of start playing other people, teammates in other positions. So Sphere, what a blessing. It's been the one thing that's kept me in shape and creating new relationships since I stopped playing. What set out to be a boutique fitness concept to compete with like Barry's Bootcamp, SoulCycle, has been pivoted, not necessarily in a bad way, but just to become more of a business on connecting people through very unique experiences and atmospheres that we create in these different workouts. Within the company, there's different ways to play soccer, right? So there's outside, there's inside, there's online now. And so we basically created different verticals within our company to be able to meet everyone wherever they're playing. So we have a boutique indoor studio, we have an online platform, and we have a licensing like a park program that we're launching. And at the end of the day, I think what separates Sphere from everybody else is connection. I think that I want to say that we will be the best company in the world at connecting people. And that's our main objective, is to bring the world together. So, through these, like, my background is in soccer, my passion in fitness, but I think my calling and connection of bringing all those things together as a business sounds really kind of weird, but our business model is to actually license to indoor soccer facilities to give them soccer and fitness. Our online platform is the first of its kind, where we offer actual online fitness programming training like Peloton, but it's soccer inspired. So we do classes with the ball and without. And then these outdoor park communities, these workouts, we essentially connect soccer and fitness, and we facilitate group workouts outside to bring people together. And all of it in design is connected. So even though like they're different subsidiary businesses, they're all actually technically working together. So as you mentioned, like heads of the call to be able to like communicate, collaborate, that's a really big component that as a business, everybody is working together to share ideas, to collaborate on, ways of expanding and, again, staying together. Because at the end of the day, you see a soccer club like Barcelona, but for Barcelona to be successful, there's a front office, back office, there's media, there's fans, there's players on the field. And that's essentially how I view our company. I was like, there's multiple components to this, but if one decides that they're better than the rest, or that they're not going to collaborate or support the rest of the team, this thing doesn't work. So that's been the biggest challenge. And focus is now, we've identified what we're doing. We're focusing on where we're going. Now it's like, how can I empower a person on my team to be in charge of this one area that stays connected to everything else, to start actually executing on our, like, how we make money. Like, how do we, right? At the end of the day, like, everybody's got to make money. So as much as that, like merge, licensing, online sales, and trying to figure out, again, just how we take steps forward to keep growing the business.
So let's go out on this, because I want to point out something that you did that other people need to take note. If you listen to Michael's story, if you listen to, he had to be super independent and was out on his own. And so he's looking for connections where he goes, right? From the young age of 8, 9 years old, traveling and playing soccer all the way through high school and then pro, constantly meeting new people and a desire to have connection because of the lack of roots, right? Because you're always on the road and you're always with a new team and a new hotel and a new family. That drove a desire to have connections, human connections with people, which is how we as humans operate, right? It's a basic need. And then you combine that with the thing that you already love and know how to do very, very well, which is soccer and staying in shape. You combine those two things, that's where the strength of Sphere is. So for people who are looking at starting a business or moving in this direction, take a look what Michael did, right? He took the personal side, forget the business creativity. People get far too hung up on, oh, it needs to be the next, SpaceX and reusable rocket. Forget all that stuff. Yeah. That's for Elon Musk. You don't need that. What you need to do is go, what am I good at? And what do I need? What do I need as a person? And bring that forward.
Yeah, solving a problem is important, and creating a better process or creating an easier way for people to live. I mean, it was like looking at a Topo Chico bottle. I'm like, wow, I take the most, just like simple water. I've been in business for so long. I mean, you can create a business about anything, but I think what's so important is having the passion to be able to endure the shit. Like it's it's right. Not supposed to be easy. And I think if you keep that in mind and understand of what you're signing up for, and just knowing that there is no quit and there is no turning back. Yep. Like you make that commitment, there's no hedging. There's no, I'll start taking this job, or I'll start looking for this, or I'll put some money away from here. No, like you've just got to be willing to go 100% in. You made that comment earlier to me about my college career and going into pro. When I made that decision and said, I'm going to be a professional soccer player, it was that, or I was going to be working at Target. No offense to anybody that works there. My cousin works there. I mean, it was a difference between me getting
life or death,
or not.
Life or death. Yes. So, I mean, look, that's a great note to go out on, because this podcast is called There Is No Try, right? So it's exactly that. Michael, quick plug. Where can people find out more about you? Where can they find more about Sphere?
Yeah, I mean, you could check me out direct at Mike Chabala, every social media handle. And for Sphere, you can just type in Sphere, S-P-H-E-R-E, on the web, and all of our stuff will pop up. Instagram is probably one of our most popular platforms, at sphere.club. And I'm pretty available and love to connect. So if anybody's ever interested or just has some more questions and how I might be able to, what I say, keep the ball rolling and create an assist, I'm happy to help, just like I've had help before. I think we all want to give back and see everybody else be successful in their own way. Yep. If you're thinking about it, don't think about it. You got to just jump and you got to do it.
Absolutely. So on that note, to follow more of our podcasts, you can check us out on either Spotify or Apple. We're on both, where podcasts are sold everywhere. Also check me out on my personal website, pierrerogers.com, to keep up to date with both the podcasts as they come out, but all the daily happenings over here. Michael Chabala, Pierre Rogers, thank you so much for being on the show today. Much appreciated, my friend.
Nice chatting with you, man.
Wonderful to meet you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.